Ricky Flex, let's talk about Shazam, Fury of the Gods, right? Rotten Tomatoes, I think it's hovering around a 53%. Uh, David Sandberg has been pretty vocal on Twitter about his disappointment in the critical reception, especially after I believe it's like around 83% for the first Shazam film. He is proud of the audience reception, and that's something that almost like you can guarantee in a DC or Marvel film with such loyal fan bases. They're going to warmly receive these movies for the most part, right? But it's like those outsiders that really are experiencing this fatigue. They want to see some differentiation at the movie theaters. This movie didn't really give us much differentiation for what we've seen from superhero franchises and solo adventures. Before we get into it, Ricky Flicks, and our experiences, what are your thoughts on the original Shazam back in 2019?
It definitely doesn't age as well as when I first saw it. I think when I first saw it, I was pleasantly surprised. It's coming off of obviously the sad news with Zack Snyder and then Joss Whedon stepping in for Justice League. And DC was even in more flux than it is now. And I think that movie was just a breath of fresh air, a good origin movie. Not great. I know the Rotten Tomatoes, I think, is probably high 80s, I want to say. Definitely doesn't deserve that. But you know what? Like, that's how you do an origin movie, superhero movie. I think they did it pretty well, or really well. And like I said, I don't think it ages well today, but you know what? Like if you ever do go back and watch that, it's like, oh, this is very adequate. Like this doesn't just get the job done. It's a little better than that. And for DC in an era where they were kind of like in flux, partly because of tragedy and also because of terrible onset Josh Whedon, it's like, all right, like this is actually so impressive that they got this done and done that well. This is the complete opposite, I think. We'll get into it, but it's just like looking back on that one, it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, so I think there was an overreaction to the original Shazam movie. You're right. It came at a time where DC was being sharply criticized for their grittiness, for the darkness, almost for like Batman vs Superman, like Man of Steel, like a few years earlier. They had a hit in Wonder Woman, okay, and they were kind of like gaining some momentum with Aquaman at this point. And then here comes Shazam. All right, it seems much more small scale. It was less of a risk, I would say. It didn't have a high budget, and it has in a like a character that is appealing to audiences that want to see a lighter type of story with this young kid who gets the powers of a god, and he still has that innate character, that heart of right a 16-year-old, even though he's playing like Zachary Levi is in his mid 30s. It captures something special. I didn't love Zachary Levi as Shazam. People really like I guess I don't know if like overall people were enthusiastic about his character, but it's just like the whole vibe of the movie, family atmosphere. They made some interesting decisions bringing in the Shazam family so early on in the first movie. It's now been 4 years since that first one. We're finally getting the sequel, and it comes at a very interesting time where DC is now being passed on to new CEOs, James Gunn, Peter Safran. They laid out all these new projects, the Snyderverse characters, quote unquote, that Levi is kind of lumped in with. His future is very unclear, yet we get a couple post-credit scenes. Going into like your experiences of this film, Ricky Flex, like if you had to give like one word to describe it, like how was your how was your viewing experience? How would you describe it?
One word. I like enjoyable it was, but like I don't want to
Okay.
say enjoyable because it wasn't a good movie, but I enjoyed myself. Hmm. I don't know. Like one
Get the thesaurus out, buddy. Let's
I think
go.
yeah, I'm not an English major, but if I had to go one word, I would be like eh. It was eh.
Okay. That's definitely a word. All right.
Yeah,
I was thinking mediocre, man. It's just it was very average and it didn't move the needle. I thought
definitely
it
not.
didn't bring anything new to the table. I thought it fell under the tropes of usual sequels that are unsuccessful, almost that sophomore slump that Like you think of rookies in Major League Baseball transitioning to their second year, right? The batting average dips about 20 points. Like I guess people are starting to read the hitters better. Now it's like, okay, David Sandberg, you have what people consider a successful first film critically, financially somewhat successful, and now you try and make everything a little bit too big. All right. Instead of one villain, let's have three villains. All right. Instead of focusing on the story of one character, let's now divert a subplot towards two different characters along with our main character. All right. Let's try and bring in some outside characters from another franchise. I think this movie got away with what the first Shazam was so successful with, right? And having it as a part, even though it makes these mentions of like the wider world it's in, it still feels very small. Uh, I think the character dynamics between uh, Billy Batson and Freddy, I think you kind of lose some of that magic in this movie with them being apart. It's like almost like a small scale, like Woody and Buzz not being together, like them going out on their own. It's like, oh, they work better when they are right playing off each other, especially when Billy Batson is in kid form, which you don't really get in this movie too. Then it's got the big CGI fight, right? The third act that takes about an hour. I think it just the movie got a little too big for its britches, right? Any thoughts on the sequel tropes there?
Yeah, like the third act pulled the Black Adam, like a bunch of CGI, way too long, just combobulated. It was literally everywhere. And it kind of just lost us. It definitely lost us as an audience member. I think the first two acts, although they weren't perfect, they weren't good. I think it was enjoyable where they had the jokes. I would say a lot of the jokes were hitting, and not necessarily like laugh out loud, but like I had a grin on my face, and I was just enjoying what I was watching. Like as in, yeah, I'm not expecting like a Godfather or a perfect movie. I'm just expecting to see some action and some nice jokes on the screen, and that's what we got in the first two acts. And then the third act was just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. And then throughout the whole movie, I thought acting wise, we'll talk about the villains here and a couple other people, but I think overall, like it was either adequate to bad. There wasn't anyone that like kind of stuck out and said, "Wow, they did really well in this movie." I think some people did okay, and then other people just were clearly bad, and you'll be shocked by who was bad. I think.
I think Sandberg, it's been really interesting because in the first Shazam, as much as lighthearted as people want to say it is, there are moments where it's like Sandberg, who has a horror background, he directed Annabelle. Like you sense like Dr. Savannah when he is like killing those people in the boardroom in the first Shazam movie. Like, whoa, wow. Didn't see that coming. And there were some moments here where like Sandberg decided I'm like the beginning with like Hespera and Calypso kind of going ham when they steal the staff. You got the dark moments where like the teacher who is a mentor to Jack Dylan Grazer's character, Freddy, just walks off a building. Like there are some dark elements here that kind of you remember, oh my gosh, like this is a horror director at the beginning of this, but it loses, right, the fun and also the the interesting decisions from the director in that third act. It's like it it does have some scary elements. I didn't think the CGI was that terrible, to be honest. I thought the dragon actually looked kind of cool, but at the same time, we're fighting a dragon for 40 minutes.
That's what I was referring to. It's a CGI battle where it's not supposed like it's similar to what we talk about in Marvel. I think Marvel, the problem is like the CGI is pretty bad, but here it's like we lost the main villain because of CGI. It's like, oh, let's just utilize the CGI here in a cool looking dragon instead of who we actually fighting. It's called Fury of the Gods, not Fury of a Dragon.
Yeah, it's like Calypso will yell a line or two every once in a while in a very cringe-like manner, and then the kids aren't even in superhero form. Like, if you're giving us the final act, have the kids like be in the Shazamily. You know, is that what they call them? The Shazamily? Is
No,
that a
but
thing?
that's decent.
Yeah, so it's like have them in the suits. I don't want like the product placement with like the Skittles and like the
Mm.
the the branding, and then just to me, there was some really corny jokes here. I think the film also was trying to poke fun at itself, right, from its infamous moment at the end of the first Shazam movie, where you have Henry Cavill supposed to make a cameo, ends up having that divisive relationship with DC, just has the Superman logo, and then Freddy has lunch with Superman and Shazam. right? And they were poking fun because like Wonder Woman, like there's a dreamlike sequence. They don't show her face, and all of a sudden it's a dreamlike sequence. All of a sudden, Digimon Hansu is showing up with like the Wonder Woman suit on. I thought that was like clever. That's why I'm like, okay, they know their audience, all right. But then at the same time, I'm just like, they know their audience to a limit, and then it seems like I was zoning out for the second
Yeah.
half of the movie. I'm just like, I've seen this 100 times. I feel like if I fall asleep for 20 minutes, I will not miss anything. And that's what it felt like this entire time. Not the entire time, but for that final act. So it's kind of what we see with like a Marvel issue with the CGI of it all, but more is just you just get lost in it all. You just lose like the Helen Mirren of it all, the Lucy Liu, right? It's like that's what you're trying to do with this sequel. Grab attention, put those names on the roster. Oh my God, they got the Dame herself, Helen Mirren, for Shazam. How much money do you think they paid her? Probably over the budget for the movie. I just think she disappears in the third act too. Like she is gone.
Literally, yeah, like on purpose.
But then she comes back for a line or two. It's just like
I
it's but
it,
what? Go ahead.
No, yeah, I'll just hop in here because like David Sandberg here, horror background, but in the first movie, I think the comedy worked well. I don't know the writers if it's different writers in this one, but I just think in this one was clearly like he was out of his depth on the character. Like I just think that not just the character, a lot of things felt forced. A lot of the jokes felt forced, especially in the second half of the movie, and then all the cringy things that happen. We talked about the Skittles, the unicorn, the kids that weren't ended up being superheroes. Lucy Liu struggling, and I think that it lost a lot of that. The Mark Strong element, I think, who he is the prototypical like plays kind of the same guy, and a lot. I won't say same guy, but like you think Sherlock Holmes, you're thinking of Shazam one. He can play that big bad, not big bad, sorry, a villain in that like origin style movie. But like in this one, I just think that it really lacked that excitement from that villain. And then you bring in the dragon at the end. And I think also it comes down to the acting as well, but it was kind of just not cohesive throughout the movie. And I think also on the other side with the family, it was not cohesive at all. And the whole point, the theme around is like, oh, we got to do this together. Like we do everything together. I forget what the saying is, but then at the end, he's fighting by himself. So it's like, oh, like what happened to the theme?
And he alienates them. You know, but in a way where he has to save them all. And they have that dome, and I kept thinking of the Simpsons movie the entire time with the dome, and they
Yes,
can't get
same.
out of it and things like that. I do think I wanted to bring up like Shazam himself, like Zach Levi. I like I found the jokes not hitting as much in this movie. I thought they were somewhat corny in the first one as well, but it seemed like it almost took that to another level here. I think it's because we have him as Shazam for such a large amount of the movie. You know, there's only so much I can take as Zach Levi as that character, cracking a joke every 2 minutes, you know, and you got that break and that emotional touch with the Billy Asher Angel part of it all, his relationship to his mother. It was a nice break from like the constant jokes and the playing off of Freddie, you know. Did you find that at all?
Yeah, I agree. I think the first one, like Asher Angel, the kid, Billy Bats, the actual kid, Billy Batson. In the first one, like I thought he was good, not great. Like I don't think he was bad. Like he did the job, and I think it was a good balance. In this one, it just wasn't at all. It's like, okay, we want to see more Shazam, so let's just have him basically be in the whole movie, I think is what they were thinking. But I think it goes back to what you're saying. Just you can't, it's hard to write that many jokes that hit. And especially in a sequel movie, DC that, to be honest, does not have the creative presence as MCU, solidified presence going forward. They will, it seems like, with James Gunn at the helm. But at the time, and especially by the end of the DC EU era, definitely did not to pull off this movie to the way they wanted to. But I will just say, I think I rather have that versus the complete opposite because this character itself is like comedic comic relief of the DCU, really, of DC. That and like the Flash, but really Shazam, just because of the kid element. So I rather lean funnier than horror, which is why it goes back to what I was saying earlier. It was just an odd choice in the beginning to have Sandberg be the guy for Shazam. and for at least for me. And I think after the first movie, the origin movie, 2019, I was like, oh, okay, I was wrong here. But this one, it's like, okay, maybe I was right.
It was kind of interesting decisions because you think of like what was DC was going through at the time. Zack Snyder, very dramatic action director, and then James Wan, right, horror director for Aquaman, then Sandberg for Shazam. It's kind of interesting what directions they're going through, literally, with those films
It makes
afterwards.
no sense.
You
And then,
question those decisions there.
yeah, and it just the David Sandberg comments this week really kind of shocked me, I will say, because they were poking so much fun at themselves, like you were saying, with these jokes from the first movie and DC itself, and also in the post-credit scenes against Marvel. So it's like it's like you were asking for this criticism,
I
and
think I don't I think he understands the climate. That's what I think. And like you would think like someone just wants to promote their movie, but he understands like, hey, like this might be it. Like this is like I think he fully understands like the new scope of DC. He's not trying to pull any punches. Like Zach Levi's going around saying like, hey, there's no guarantees I won't be in the future for the DC universe. And we all know in the back of our minds. I mean, that's kind of a long shot. I don't care how good friends you are with James Gunn. It seems like he has a sense of reality that like other people aren't comfortable with him. It almost sounds like he doesn't support the movie, but I think he's just like he just realizes the state of DC right now and how
I
he's probably not a part of it.
yeah, I agree. I actually will say it's I won't call it a long shot, but I do think it's he's the underdog and staying. But if they're gonna keep Shazam, he's staying, is basically what I think. I think he's ingratiated himself with the character. But my only throwback to that is they already have so many projects going on coming for the next 5 years. And to be honest, like he's 42, man.
He's not. He doesn't look that young.
Yeah, he looked older in this movie. I know it was only like
4 years.
yeah, but like he looked it in my opinion. And not like muscular, but like the face. And I think if you go another 4 years, you're 46. Gal Gadot's not getting any younger. That's what back to my like original thing. I think she's gonna age out, unfortunately, no matter how good she looks. She's gonna age out. You always age out. So I think, yeah, it is a long shot, but maybe not as long as you think, just because if they're gonna have a Shazam, it has to be him. But I just think they won't have a Shazam.
Interesting. Yeah, because there's also two post credit scenes here. We don't have to go into specifics for spoilers' sake, but some of them are tying into DC projects we've seen before within like kind of that awkward period of Snyder passing on to like uh the Warner Brothers and James Gunn entering the sphere with like Suicide Squad, Peacemaker, and there's also connections brought back to the first Shazam film. It's just hilarious to think that him and The Rock probably will never meet. Like the arch nemesis was never really like solidified in the plans, right? Black Adam versus Shazam was never in the plans.
It
It's
just
iconic comic book rivalry,
it's
iconic, and it was just like
it's
never planned to happen.
It's crazy that they decided, okay, we won't do that. Instead, we'll bring Henry Cavill back with a new suit in a post-credit scene for Black Adam. They decided to do that over what you just said.
It
That
it
is
it
still
would it
mind-boggling
would
to
have
me.
it would have lived on in public consciousness so much better if that was Shazam who showed up.
Yeah, and now, like, with the Henry Cavill post-credit scene just shows, like, yeah, this is a complete joke of a studio.
Oh my god, and like that turmoil that happened. Oh my god, it made Dwayne Johnson look like a joke. You know, it
Yeah,
hurt. His legacy as Black Adam is like the opposite of what he intended it to be. He's like, this is the character that's going to define me, but like it's going to define how he was kind of. He's not built for these type of movies, and he kind of was a black mark on the DC universe while he was there.
and the
Not
problem
literally, but like
yeah, yeah. Yeah, but it's also because he drove up the anticipation for this film sky high. He literally was like, this is my dream project. This is arguably the biggest movie star in the
sounds like
world.
a politician, bro, rather than
Yeah,
an
like
actor.
I've been working on this for 10, 15 years to get made. Finally gets made. This is gonna be my legacy in my acting career, my career in general, yada yada yada. So you can't just be saying that and saying, "Oh, the writing on this movie," and just talking it up, not just like a normal press tour. Like this is like your life depends on it, and then come out with the way it came out. That's my
Yeah.
problem. Versus like Shazam 2, I said it Black Adam does in the 3rd act, but I didn't have those expectations for this movie, and I still think overall, even though this wasn't good either, it was better than Black Adam.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so. I can see myself rewatching this sometime if when it pops on HBO, you know? Just
Yeah.
because, it's just maybe it's something I don't it's a lot of people say brainless type of movie or like turn your brain off. It's like just fun. You talked about it. Black
Yeah.
Adam isn't really fun.
No, not really.
No. And I don't really want to spend time with those characters. I like some of the characters here. I thought Rachel Zegler was fine. Okay. I like Jack Dylan Grazer as Freddy. I think he's excellent. I think he's going to be a great actor. I think he's going to do a lot of stuff. Like, I think he is one of the characters in this cast that's just naturally funny. He doesn't have to try, right? And he doesn't sound corny. Like, it seems like comedic timing, like, comes to him, right? A lot more naturally than these other characters, especially the kid wise, you know? I feel like he knew what he was doing. They try to give him some love with his own side story with Athena. I don't think it totally works. We don't get enough of Billy and Freddie together, but yeah, I still my takeaways are like those two are like two bright stars. They're going to be big names for a long time. I think. Any other standouts for you?
No, I think I definitely totally agree with what you said there. Did you know that he passed up on being Ashtray in Euphoria?
So what's his face's brother?
Jack Dylan Grazer, the kid, Freddie,
The
in this
kid at the
movie.
end of season two.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
he's also in season 1, but, like,
Well,
yeah,
I know, but like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. He passed on Euphoria for this.
I mean, he made a lot more. Well, yeah. I guess he would have made something similar, probably.
I know, but, like, if you look at the cast of Euphoria and what they're getting casted in now versus this, it's like, oh, first off, like, I agree with you. So I think as in, like, his performance in this, but 2, it's like, oh, I could see what Euphoria saw in him to be Ashtray and, like, be in their show.
Yeah,
And
maybe it just wasn't big enough for him. That's a pretty small
right,
role.
and, like, looking at his, like, IMDb right now, he's gonna be in a movie, Downtown Owl, based off a novel, dark comedy. Ed Harris is in it. Um, Finn Wittrock, Henry Golding, Vanessa Hudgens. So like, it's not like a,
It's an
you
exciting
know,
cast.
yeah, it's an exciting cast. It's just not
Young.
anything big. I would say, as in critically like big. I would say, but like that's a decent big cast, you know. But it's just looking at the Euphoria cast. It is tough to see, but maybe one day like, he can get a breakout role besides this one. I would say this is a breakout role, but like a stamp of like, oh, I can get back to like the Euphoria path.
Yeah, dude, I think he's gonna be fine, you know, and I think he kind of I would imagine he's done with superhero movies for a little bit. Once you're done with like these two Shazam movies, you know, Sandberg not going to be around. Maybe he's like, he was somewhat of a superhero. I think like maybe it's not his passion. I think he's just can do better things.
And do you remember when we talked about Rachel Zegler getting casted for this? And we were like, oh, like
It's
obviously
weird.
West Side Story, Spielberg, but a little weird. She said she came out with the comments this weekend saying that she took it because she needed money. Like she wasn't sure if she was like going to get another job or anything, so she said yes to it because she needed the paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, that's what a lot of these guys do, right? And girls, they just they want the money, right? They may not have the passion for it. It's kind of shocking though because she's coming off like I don't believe was she nominated for an Oscar? I don't think so.
No, no. Remember, she wasn't
She wasn't
invited to the
invited.
Oscars at
Yep.
first, and then they had to invite her last second, literally the
Uh,
last second.
yeah, no, that's a bad look. What has she done aside from West Side Story?
Nothing,
She
nothing.
must have done something. Was she like a Disney kid growing up?
I thought she was on Broadway or whatever. No,
I don't know. She might have played. I have feeling like she was in plays. I have no idea.
yeah, that's
Judging
what I
by her
thought too.
performance in West Side
Um,
Story.
don't
But as you're looking that up, I think I'll just give my score for this movie, and then we'll move on to the checkup. We'll give this a 46. 46. Semi enjoyable, pretty forgettable, and it's going to be forgettable, I think, in the pantheon of DC movies as well. All right, could be wrong. We'll see about that, but yeah, 46. What do you give it?
38, 38.
Wow,
Um,
that's lower than I thought.
no, it wasn't good,
Yeah,
but
you're right. Yeah, it was mediocre.
but
Worse.
it's better than Black Adam. I'm looking back at my like rankings here or like my scores. catalog. It's just like I'm always too high on these movies just because like I'm like, oh, we got to give them credit for being enjoyable. I think I said at the top of this year, I'm not doing that this year. So 38. I'm
Ricky
doing it a
Flex.
little bit, but not all the way.
Yeah, Ricky Flex taking no prisoners. Taking no prisoners.